Hi, Assalamualaikum, Cik Ridzuan.
Hi, Circle. Good morning.
How are you?
Good. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Nadia. I'm from MDEC and I'm from the division Digital Talent Development. And specific to that, it's nurturing and grooming of youth of Malaysia. And we have with us today, who will be moderating with me, is Kayum. He is from
Hi.
Transition.
Hi
Yes,
Kayum,
so
how are you?
we're from Alhamdulillah. Good. Thank you, Syarikat. We're from
Yeah,
Transition.
sorry because I don't know why, but my computer seems to have some problem, so that's why it took me some time to log in. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. It's okay.
Yeah.
No worries. Okay, just before we begin, I would just like to recap the objective of this video that you'll be sharing to us about the careers of fintech and also the hemisphere of fintech as well is for us to later on edit and put into video bites, and we'll be
Mm.
cascading to school career counselors for them to start the ball rolling for the kids to know more about technology careers. And of course, it's not just all coding and programming. There's also the other side of things. That's also fintech. And
Yes.
but of course, before we actually roll out nationwide, we will have you to approve of first your bits that we have taken and make sure that like everything that you mention and everything you say is okay. So okay, I was just wondering, do you have anything to share with us today, or we can just dive in straight to the questions?
You can dive in straight to the question, and later, if let's say you need further clarification, I can provide you with some material. Yeah, if it's necessary.
Okay, awesome.
Interesting.
Okay, I think I'll leave it to Q to start the ball rolling.
Okay.
Sure.
All right. Sorry. Sorry if this looks a little bit, I would say, not as packed as you might expect, but bear in mind that because of the connectivity issues of the students and all that, this is a much better format where we can put it offline and then so the kids can actually access it as and whenever they need it. So just before to start things off, maybe we could get a little bit from you in terms of what fintech really is about. I think for some of the students out there, they might be somewhat confused, or they're not quite sure of what actually fintech is about. We know that it's finance on one side and it's technology on the other. But we see touch and go as an e-wallet. It's also considered as a fintech. We also have places like those who are giving out loans as fintechs, those who are aggregating financial services as fintech. Maybe Cik Ridzuan can actually shed a little bit of light, or maybe demystify a little bit of what fintech is about for our kids.
Sure. Fintech, in a simple term, as everybody probably would understand from the acronym itself, is financial technology. But in its practical sense and how it is applied, it is actually a new approach in terms of using technology as the key enablers for innovative businesses to deliver value to the relevant stakeholder in solving a specific issue statements that these stakeholders presented to the businesses, and then this is where that value is going to be able to solve those specific issue statements. So that's basically what fintech is trying to give in terms of their value proposition, and the value proposition always are unique to the specific stakeholders. To further explain that, let me give you an example. For instance, if everybody would have heard about financial inclusion, helping the B40, helping the SMEs. So what we are trying to do is, we know that the B40 and then from a business, the SMEs, the small medium enterprises, have problems in terms of getting financing from the existing financial institution. For example, banks, even some credit cooperative, and some money lenders. And the issue statement that I was talking about just now is, why does the B40 and the SME has difficulties getting the money while the financial institution actually has the money for them to give? The problem lies within the way the lenders, which is the financial institution, look at the potential borrower who are the B40 and SME from a credit worthiness perspective. And this credit worthiness has a big gap, and this is where fintech comes in and provide alternative view in how the credit assessment can be done and how the money could be given to the potential borrower, and how the money then can be collected to make sure that cycle of money giving and money repayment is consistent and not disrupting and creating what we call a systemic risk. So this is how fintech bring about a new value proposition and try to either challenge the incumbent, which are the existing financial institution, or they could also supplement the role of the incumbent. So it depends on how does that work, and this is where later we can discuss further how does either challenging or supporting could also be part of the career path of some of the students that can consider going forward.
All right, thank you so much. I think it's a very interesting point that maybe if I could pick up a little bit there. That I was going to the subsequent question would be, what has changed that has created this sudden influx of interest in fintech? Because if you see somebody like Touch and Go, they have been around for a very long time.
Yeah,
I think more than a decade at least, close to 2 decades maybe.
Yeah.
And they have been using RFID, keeping track of the data of users of the highways. But all of a sudden now we see that we have IP88, we have all these boost cards, all these new e-wallet companies that just came out. Out of all of a sudden, it has to be some factor that is pushing into this, or some factor that is actually cruising into it. Is it because of how data is being transferred, the rate of data being transferred because of 4G or 5G, things like that? Maybe you can give a little bit of an insight of what has really happened in the last decade, or maybe in the last couple of years, that has really bring about all this fintech into emergence.
That's a great question. I mean, what happened? There's from my perspective, there's three things that had happened, either at the global level, at regional level, and within Malaysia itself. Firstly, in the global level, we notice now that information flows freely between countries and between people. So information really are fast. Travel very, very fast now. Anything that happened on the other side of the world, say in the US or in China, would be instantly communicated to us, to Malaysian, and to this part of the world, maybe within seconds. So we are very well informed about the availability of information. That's one. And those platform that allows us to know about all those information are the platforms like Instagram, Twitter. If you are more serious in businesses, we use emails, and there's a whole host of other things that can be used for information to be exchanged. So this speed of information is something that has opened up a new perspective and new awareness to many people about what's going on globally. Then secondly, you look at certain countries like China, where they have gone through and take up evolution from a cash-based society to a cashless society in a very short time. So China, being a large country with more than 1.8 billion people as a population, suddenly in a span of less than 10 years, have transformed their society to be almost 100% cashless society. So this phenomenon actually is really being pushed and facilitated by many fintech companies, and also a new term that I want to introduce here, a techfin company. Techfin, it's the other way around. Technology that actually go into financial services. So companies like Alibaba, for example, or companies like Ant Financial, they started as a technology company, but they evolved and realized that their consumer also require financial solution. So from a simple messaging services like, for example, Line or WeChat, they then provide the financial services within that through this captive community that they have acquired based on the messaging platform that they have created earlier as a technology provider. So this is another twist to fintech, because now there's an emergence of tech fin companies that's also going into financial services. So that travel to us, and we also now see how fintech companies help to build in that gap, or fill in that gap that exists, as I said earlier. And then thirdly, when we come to Malaysia, I think since 2016, when Bank Negara and Securities Commission, together with MDEC, starts to facilitate the growth of many new startups, especially in the fintech. Bank Negara comes out with a program called FTEG, Financial Technology Enablers Group, that facilitated the creation of the regulatory sandbox. And then SC come up with a community called Affinity Community, where they allow technology to be infused on crowdfunding, on digital investment management, and now SC going into digital asset exchanges, as well as now allowing IOE, IEO, initial exchange offering. So these are advancements that has really sparked interest to those who are actually pursuing and following the development of fintech throughout the last decade. So with all this combined, and with then recently government also facilitating via the establishment of the 5G network, that really spur and combining all these elements, external, internal, for the last 10 years, really have accelerated the progress, the awareness, and how the mushrooming of companies like IP88, as you said just now. And just to give you some statistic, about 40% of the fintech company in Malaysia are companies that's related to payments. Either they are wallets, either they are payment gateway, or whether they are a remittance company, as well as those involved in mobile money, or they call it electronic money. So these has a very distinct features, but they are clustered under one big category called payment services. Okay, so that's how things have evolved for the last 10 years, and that's how it has influenced Malaysia as a nation and Malaysian as an individual when we look at that, when we studied for the last 10 years. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Just to take a little bit on that policy, because I like the fact that because as an association, you as the head of an association, you are representing the industry, which is the fintech industry, in engaging with the stakeholders like government and such. Compared to how China is progressing, because maybe their system, the system of government is different, and it's much faster to push certain things. What are the things that, how has Malaysia been faring? Of course, bearing in mind we have MDEC here, and how has Malaysia fared in terms of the policies to catch up with the progress of what fintech has become? And of course, this touches a little bit on things like what we haven't touched yet, like cryptocurrencies, blockchain, and things like that. Because I think when you're talking about payment as well, you also touch about the IOE, and I think there's also the ICOs now. I think that has been quite famous for the last 2-3 years before. So how have Malaysia been in terms of governance and policy making be able to catch up with the progress of fintech?
So I think on whether Malaysia is able to catch up and how Malaysia needs to catch up, it largely depends on understanding what are the value proposition that firstly Malaysian are looking for. We also made some survey and study based on some of our neighboring country. I'll quote Singapore and Indonesia as an example. Singapore being a city state, the definition of financial inclusion is not similar to how we understand it. Singapore financial inclusion is talking about how they can also help those aging citizen, those who are already retired, maybe above the age of 70, to also live an affordable life in Singapore. Singapore is, as a country and as a city, is one of the most expensive place to live on earth. They are very expensive. So if you do not have certain income and you do not have a place where you can live comfortably and can afford to sustain that lifestyle, you will easily fall under the definition of being poor, or under the line of poverty. So their definition of financial inclusion is talking about how to elevate the lifestyle and the livelihood of certain segment in the society. But when you look into Indonesia, Indonesia is a very huge country with more than 15,000 islands, archipelagos, and with citizens close to 260 million people in Indonesia. So Indonesia doesn't need that kind of policy for them to drive economic prosperity. What they look at is they looked at how to facilitate and empower small businesses in their country. So we know that Indonesia focuses on looking at how to provide quick micro loan to small businesses. And this is how they elevate the status and the lifestyle of the Indonesian. And their value proposition in terms of creating a specific kind of fintech industry is also different. So then coming back to Malaysia, when we look at Malaysia, we have 30 million people. We have about 2 million migrants in Malaysia. And we have almost, I think, a definition of poverty. I'm still talking about financial inclusion. Yeah? So when we talk about poverty, we have two types of poverty. One is those who are living in the urban areas, the city, people who are in the city dwellers who are poor, and those who are living in the urban areas where people thought that they are poor, but they are actually different in terms of definition of being poor. So the creation of fintech and the approach that we need to do is not similar to the two countries that I mentioned just now. So what we have done is to look into, for those who are living in the city, what do they need? They need a certain level of activities that could elevate their income. They do have job, but the job doesn't pay well. So they need actually either a solution where the income can be supplemented. So this is where solution like Grab provide them an opportunity either to become a rider for delivery or rider for taxi. Okay. And then those who are living outside of KL and living in the rural areas, they could actually elevate their life by being part of a digital community that can help to boost actually trade among themselves and eliminating the middleman, where that's where the cause of many poverty in the rural areas, because the middlemen who are taking away the margin, especially for agriculture, for fisheries, and all those agri-based activities. So these are the kind of focus or value proposition that we need to look at. And on top of that, we also need to make sure that people can start to invest. So this is where you can see SC introduce players that can help in doing and making investment easier. The robo advisor, that you know. There are 3 or maybe 4 in Malaysia that has been introduced recently. But if you scout within the fund management industry itself, there are already earlier players that provided some sort like a digitalized platform. For example, like under public mutual, there is already public mutual online where you can buy, you can sell whatever fund you want. But the problem with all this are the awareness is not there. And I hope that this session that we have today would give people and the audience awareness about how all these are already available and where to get the information for them to understand further and hopefully participate. So in terms of policy, so this is where I think what has happened is we push that from the industry level via us, via MDEC, via the regulator, and now the policy maker at the governmental level are catching up in terms of understanding, okay, this is how we need to create a specific value proposition. And we notice that government has provided a lot of funding in terms of either a matching grant or a specific targeted funding, because that is one of the best way to help. But government need direction and guidance in terms of who actually need the funding. So a consolidation and understanding about what the entire country needs must be communicated to the government. And we are also hoping that the government looked at creating a national level policy and coordinating between government agencies so that this facilitation, whether it's funding, help, program, training, can be orchestrated better for everybody to get the value that they deserve. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ridzuan. I think that's a very poignant point that you made, and which is essentially when it comes to policy, it's not that Malaysia doesn't have the policies and doesn't have the ecosystem to back them up, but rather the awareness of all these facilities and all of these advantages are not there as much or at the level of where we want it to be just yet. I think maybe just to share with you a little bit of what Digital Ninja have performed, at least over the last couple of months. They've done during the Digital Ninja Career Immersion X. We couldn't do the normal career immersion where we send them out to internships and all that, but we created or simulated an online company that they were able to actually participate. They came up with hackathon ideas and all that. What I liked about what you mentioned is that some of the weaknesses or some of the points that we can improve upon for our society, we are seeing some glimpse of that in the digital native of Digital Ninjas. So they are speaking the right languages, they know what crowdfunding is, or maybe a bit not knowing what Atta Plus is from SE, but they will know what the concept of crowdfunding is and things like that. So hopefully, some ways that they will be able to kind of understand this conversation that we are having from different levels, of their interest. Over time, they'll get it a bit deeper and deeper. But I do think that the Digital Ninjas would be a good, in a way, it's an indicator or it demonstrates the positivism or the optimism of the future of what you have just mentioned just now in terms of the challenges. I do see that, from our first time experience working with them, they are actually going to be our best bet in terms of developing the future. Yeah. So I do like the fact that we are making comparisons with China, we are making comparisons with Indonesia. I did wanted to pick up on the potential in terms of population, demography, which is bigger, the countries which have 1.8 billion population, and a country or a city like Jakarta, which Greater Jakarta alone will have about 20 to 30 million people living in that one city. So you mentioned that we don't actually have to play similar games. We do have to find this local proposition or a proposition that is unique to the Malaysian situation. Agriculture is one of them, and we did see, Nadia, that there's a few of the ninjas came up with at the aggregators for marketplace for fresh fruits and things like that. So I think they are touching the right pulses. What about in terms of their own personal development? When we say fintech, should one become an accountant or pursue a financial degree, or should one go into a tech-based degree to become, into this industry? And where do you see in terms of the potential of what are the type of skills that you would need to survive or to thrive in the fintech industry? Maybe Ridzuan can share with us a little bit on that.
Yeah. I think this is important because when we look at fintech as an industry, we divided it into 5 key pillars, and one of the pillars is also looking at talent or resources. And when we talk about talent or resources, and when we look at an individual at a very young age, maybe perhaps about to enter a university or about to choose seriously what are the interests that they're going to focus on as a career. I think if I'm at that stage, we need to first understand whether are we going to be an employee or are we going to become an employer? Because if you, again, I draw comparison with certain countries. In Singapore, I noticed that many people are actually now skewed towards becoming an entrepreneur because there's a lot of facilitation done by the government of Singapore in helping new entrepreneurs, new businesses, because the guidance or the policy guidance from the governmental perspective is if you start a business and if you have an ambition to become an international business, which what they are pushing for, the government will help you from day one until you become an international player. So a lot of young people in Singapore are geared towards becoming an entrepreneur. And the reason why entrepreneurship is something that the government is encouraging is when you become an entrepreneur, you are also actually creating jobs. A business would need help and they need employee for them to actually grow. But that's not for everybody. So this is where I come to the second choice of career where you can become an employee, where in Malaysia, a lot of the curriculum that we have and a lot of the program that we see, especially for the youngsters, are geared towards how do you become a relevant employee. So you no longer can focus on becoming a professional like an accountant or just becoming an accountant or just a lawyer or just even one single profession and be contented with it, because in future the economy is going to be so diverse and so mixed up that you cannot survive comfortably just because you are an accountant. An accountant now will need to enhance their services because there's so many software out there that can replace them. Even doctors, if you think that there is no solution out there that can replace some function of a doctor, there's already out there, and I've seen what we call a solution called Doctor on Call, spreading from India to Indonesia and now coming to Malaysia. So the question is, a lot of even lawyers, I just had a discussion 2 days ago where some of the function of a lawyer can actually be taken by some digital function. So the question is, when you asked me just now, okay, when I take a tertiary education, what should I be? Actually, you can choose to be anything. When I look at myself, when I started my study, I did economics, then I did accounting and finance, and nothing to do with technology. But I realized that technology would be something that would help along the way. And I decided when I did my master, I focused on management information system. And Alhamdulillah, that has helped me to understand the mixture between how to run a business, how to look at it from a regulatory perspective, and what ingredient from a technology perspective that could help to facilitate to boost the performance of the businesses. So depending on one interest, if let's say you want to become a doctor, let's not just stop at functioning as a doctor. As you know, when you saw a doctor profession in the 1980s or the 1990s, think about how further can you help people in terms of giving that health benefit and health value proposition to the target that you are actually interested in. So for example, if you are talking about helping people with diabetes, so let's not just stop there in terms of looking at diabetes. You must think about what diabetes have on one person in terms of impact and how that will affect their lifestyle. So you could probably support them from a medical perspective, from a pharmaceutical perspective, from the lifestyle needs in terms of health, in terms of diet. So your understanding about diabetes is not just as a doctor, but you become a problem solver. And this is where you need to have technology to facilitate your understanding and to facilitate the segment that you want to help. So to put it simply, we need to have a different mindset in terms of when you look at an issue statement. You are no longer want to look at it from just one point perspective, but you need to look at it from a multiple point perspective so that you can create a holistic solution for the target segment that you want to serve. So that's how I think a young person should think, and that requires, sorry, a mature set of thinking. And I would believe that if you want to have younger generation or excuse me, digital native that are able to do that, we need to change our education system. Yeah.
Thank you, thank you. I think that is actually a very interesting point, and it kind of tells you a little bit about what's happening today. You see companies like AirAsia, they have big pay. Now all of a sudden they have an e-commerce platform. You know that Google and the biggest tech companies are also into oil and gas because they know how to use the database, the huge database that they have to to calculate where are all the in terms of the geographic data to actually find out where all the shale oil is. So these are very interesting times, and like what you said, multi-perspective, multidisciplinary. So it doesn't matter whether or not you go into finance and then tech, or whether you do tech or any other companies and then finance. It is important for us not to take like the traditional way or the traditional mindset of a professional hat.
Yeah.
You wear an accountant hat, you wear a doctor hat, because now the opportunity for you to cross disciplines are much greater in terms of the mobility as well. I like the fact that you mentioned that you were accounting and finance, you started off accounting and finance and economics, and you got yourself into BIM. Myself, I used to work in the bank. I'm also a finance graduate. I started off getting interested into technologies because the amount of data that gets processed every day is just overwhelming every day if you wanted to do it manually. So BIM is the way to go. We've also had automation, things like that. For the ninjas as well as for the youngsters out there, maybe instead if they see a preference in terms of by how like yourself, Ridzuan, and myself, we are ex-bankers or ex-financial finance professionals, we will have a better understanding of the data sets that we are looking at because of the experience of dealing with this data. Is that a better way rather than just concentrating on IT alone? Yeah, because this might be a bit controversial a little bit.
Yeah.
Might not agree with it.
So I think if you wanna break it down into what should be their focus. So one should focus on looking at, if you look at a business from outside in, a business would require, what does a business need? So that's why I said just now the five key elements or the core elements that we look at as a industry association. We look at talent, we look at branding or narrative, and then we look at funding, we look at technology, and then we looked at the governance of the business. So a business would need at least these five key elements. So when you talk about talent, you need to make sure that the talent is organized in terms of who could be facing the client, who could be doing the business solutioning in the middle, and then who could be crunching numbers and managing data as and when they comes in. So basically, those three type of general talent is needed for you to run a profitable company and to make sure that the company stays viable and sustainable. And then when you look at branding or narrative, when a company has certain value proposition, someone need to be able to tell the story effectively. And this is what I have observed in terms of how Malaysian has a great product, great services, intelligent people, but we lack the ability to tell good stories. Telling stories is really important for people to know what we are and how we want them to see us. So you might have the best product, you might have the most talented people, but if there's no one out there or within the business that can tell stories, so the product will just become the best kept secret. Okay, so this is where I see countries like Singapore are able to really put themselves out there and show the world that they can do this and that. And when we look at ourselves and we notice that they are no different from us, but the way they tell the story is as if they are the only one in the world who is capable of doing that. So we need to be aware that we need that kind of talent as well. We need that kind of capabilities in any given business or any given professional. And then third, I talk about funding. Raising fund is a skill on its own. So if you have a business, you have a great product, but you don't know how to, okay, you have a storyteller, but you don't know how to value your company. You don't know how to scale your company. You don't know how to get the right kind of investor along the way. That is also another thing that created a different kind of discipline and opportunities for people out there. So these are where I think for finance, accounting people will be very, very suitable. But finance and accounting people may not be suitable for the previous one that I mentioned about storytelling, because a lot of accountants are very reserved and to themselves. And this is where you go back to the first element just now, where we talk about talent. The talent manager need to be able to fit the profile into the right kind of job. So these are the new perspective in terms of how HR can function. And then the fourth element, we talk about technology. Technology is good, but it has to also serve its purpose. So this is where if you know about network or if you know about hardware, it may not be useful if you are trying to create, say, for example, an e-marketplace, because you are not able to understand who are your stakeholders. So you need other people, analysts, research people to help you. So there's so many other functionalities that need to help you in terms of how you want to deliver your value, your own value proposition. And the last one is talking about governance. This is where you need lawyers or you need people who know regulation, but also practical from a business standpoint. So as you can see, if you combine all these five elements, an accountant cannot stand alone, an economist cannot stand alone, a techie guy cannot stand alone, a marketeers cannot stand alone, but they have to serve in a different perspective given the current in business environment. So if you want to choose a career, not just think about, okay, if I behave like a true professional accountant, I'm already doing my job. No, you need to understand the entire spectrum of business, then think about how you can actually give your value proposition and help other function. And this is where we always promote these 5 key elements because this is really important for either employers to understand and employees to understand so that they can synergize and give positive impact to wherever they work or whatever business that they do. Yeah, thanks.
So this the five, just to recap for audience, is basically talent.
Yeah, talent.
Branding and narrative. So
Yeah.
this is your marketing. I like the fact that you mentioned this because it's something similar that we mentioned to our leaders before. We said that it doesn't matter if you have the best idea, but if you can't present it well, it does not mean anything. It will not amount to anything.
Yeah.
So we also have funding, which is how we've also been instilling in terms of the business aspect of how they do costing, how they figure out the net worth of certain things and the cost of certain activities and such. Technology, and I do love the fact that you mentioned this, is that it has to serve its purpose. I think one of the things that, from what we have observed from not just the previous program of Digital India, but coming back to 2018, it kind of gives us a little bit of an understanding of what we understand about these youths today is that they are very interested in the technology. They get excited over Lego, right? We see the Lego, they get excited over Lego, they want to build something, but the approach that you have been repeating is usually on the UX perspective, the user perspective. What does the user get out of it, and do they need that fancy technology if there's a better way, a more direct way, a more cheaper way to get what they want? So I think that is a very, very interesting point that you've mentioned in terms of technology, and that is very, very true. As well as governance. Governance is something that I think maybe even our ninjas might not be as familiar with. You coming from the association, I think governance is very, very important. And as a business owner myself, I do see the importance of having this part in any businesses. How you deal with your contracts so that you don't get cheated, how your SOPs are for every individual so that you know that your staff is doing the right things, and if any dispute arises, that you always have these particular things to fall back on. When we are talking about Fintech, one of the things that I did remember Malaysia having problems with for digital banking when banks were trying to adopt financial technology was where data is actually located, where physical data is actually located. One of the things that I've noticed maybe 2 or 3 years ago is that one of the reasons why Fintech remains for Malaysians at least, some of the companies are still stuck in Malaysia is because other countries want to have their data protected and be located in their home native countries compared to, let's say, Malaysia operating a big data farm and then putting all the data of financial data of other people from every other countries into our place. So that seems to be one of the hurdles. In 5 years' time, when we see our ninjas later on getting into Fintech, what are some of the challenges that you see that you want to tell the ninjas to be wary of, and not just the ninjas, of course, everybody else. What are the challenges that you foresee in this space, Fintech industry, like what we have seen in the past? What do you see will be the next challenges in the next 5 to 10 years?
Okay, I think what is starting to emerge is it's very interesting to see that some mature fintech companies. I just want to mention about the recent issue with Wirecard. Wirecard is actually a card payment aggregator, a huge company listed in DAX 30 in Germany. Very, very established company, a very mature fintech company, profitable, and has been there for, I think, more than 5-10 years. I think they are very, very well established, and they are in fact a very early adopters of fintech. And the second one is a bank in India called Yes Bank, also a digital-based bank. So what I'm trying to say is, as a fintech company grow, they have this unique mindset where they are always pushing the boundaries and doing business on a very gray line, because that's how you innovate in many ways. So this is why I mentioned just now about when we talk about the 5 elements, one of it is governance. And governance is not just talking about the externalities of governance, where you talk about complying with regulation and rules set by the regulators, but also talking about how you govern internally in terms of how the corporate culture would evolve and how you discipline some of your key function to make sure that you stay true to serving your customers, uh, continue to solve the customer's issue, even though you become a very profitable company. Uh, where I'm going at is, when I mentioned about Wirecard, the problem with Wirecard wasn't that their technology become obsolete, or wasn't that because they are unable to comply with certain regulation. But what happened was they ignore the mere fact that some of the key function within the business are starting to break their own internal policies, and those people were left unchecked and were allowed to do whatever they want. I call this a superstar culture, where you do not want to sack your superstar players for the sake of making sure that the business continue to perform as it is. So this is a very dangerous culture. And if you notice, maybe some of the ninja may not be aware, in the 90s, there's a company called Enron and a WorldCom, where if you look at the nature of the fiasco that they have, it is exactly the same nature of culture that actually brought down the companies. And surprisingly, in Wirecard is exactly the same elements again. Auditors not doing their job, the superstar actually was protected, and the CEO allowed that superstar to do whatever that person wants, and allow some bad behavior and bad practices to continue to fuel the progress of the company. So this is something that everybody, whether you are in fintech or not, but especially if you are in fintech, you need to understand. Even if you're technology, even if you're good at whatever else that you do, you must be staying true to the original reason why you start business. You want to help customer, you want to solve their problem, and that is what you should continue going forward. So the worry that I have with the next 5 to 10 years is because the younger generation are very prone to quick gratification. They want instant reward. They want to see instant result. So this is something that needs to have a balance in terms of someone in the company with enough authority to check and make sure that this continue to be supervised and monitored effectively. That's one challenge. The other challenge is also talking about how the policymakers, the regulators also need to catch up in understanding about progress. If the regulators, if the government are not quick enough to understand, and this is where we see those people who are in the crypto world, in the digital asset world, are so rebellious, and they go to either the other side of the web. Okay, they go to the dark web or the deep web to do their business there, rather than let themselves be regulated by the policies or the regulation. So this is dangerous, because once the businesses go into the deep and dark web, they will also bring their customer there, and customers have no idea of how dangerous the dark web and the deep web is. So this trend need to actually be checked, so that businesses doesn't go to places where they are not supposed to go, and bring their customers as well, and making sure that government policymaker, regulators also keep themselves updated. And this is, again, how can that be done is regulators, policymaker need to not see themselves as know-it-all and not, they need to be partners to us, the businesses, work together in terms of serving the vulnerable, which are the people who may not know the technicalities and the technology behind this. So if we work together in protecting the customer interest, then I think it can move very, very far and very, very fast. But if we, the businesses, have to deal with the regulators as a hurdle or a problem, then our focus to serve the customer will be distracted, and this is where some of the resources will be wasted in terms of serving unnecessarily hurdles that is created by other stakeholders. And this is where I think it will not give us the optimized result. So I think that is changing, but I'm just highlighting it here to make sure that it doesn't come back because of some of the policymakers and some of the regulators may not actually want to change their approach and their mindset looking at this, despite the fast pace, the data that is now coming in a speed that has never been seen before. Yeah.
If I may add to that, Ridzuan, I think
Yeah.
concerned with regards to the challenges of talent, I think what you mean would be integrity, correct? So basically, they have a sense of responsibility, credibility, and also you be, ethical in whatever conducts that they do. And with regards to the institution being catching up,
Yeah.
I think with the internet being as big as it is and the opportunities, like you mentioned, without no regulation, without all these laws, in a way protecting them, and also making sure that they also have the opportunities to do business, which I think you are correct in the sense that the government needs to partner. If they can't catch up with the latest technology that's in the market, if they don't know what's in right now, they need to technically hang out or
Yeah.
people who do know and get their feedback on this, because the days of where the government knows everything is not just being from a government agency. We find that
Yeah.
we have to partner with industry because we don't know everything, because
Yeah.
the industry is vast. Different genres pops up every day. There are micro genres, subsidiaries from that. So we can't catch up with that. The moment we do have a certification, there are 10 things, 100 things, new things that comes up. So Syarikat would be the shortcut. And also, if I can just give a brief explanation about the Digital Ninja program that Kai was mentioning, we actually take talented secondary school students in digital making, and we upskill them further. So they come for a boot every year, and this is going to be in online 100%. And Kayu and his team has been actually a trainer, and his team mentoring in from the sense of entrepreneurship, and also industry exposure. He gets mentors related to, if it's agriculture technology, he gets them. So the kids need to have a bigger mindset of what's going on, and also at the same time they need to play well with others, which is what we do too. And what you mentioned about integrity, we find that it's also very important. We keep on saying, though you might be smart at something, you have a responsibility. Like Spider-Man, you have a technology that nobody else has. So how do you use it? Just because you're better than somebody else, you don't trample them along the way. You know, you up as well. So that's a bit about the Digital Ninja program. And I think what you mentioned is quite crucial. Kids from the get-go need to be nurtured in the sense of, I think the integrity is very important. The sense of like how does it affect other people, but of course at the same time, if you're in a business where technology is being restricted, that's where I think the dark web comes in, because everybody needs to eat by the end of the day. They need to pay the bills, and they need to sell their products. So if governments do not catch up and do not accommodate, as how I think, if I may say, that with the e-hailing in the past, they had issues with the taxis and restricted, and people are looking for jobs every day. And if you simplify them into getting a job, I'm sure if they want to impose a certain, I don't know, maybe income tax a bit or something like that, I think they're more than happy to, if you facilitate how they can work every day, because not everybody's routine are the same, right? Some people can't afford babysitter, they have to send their children, and if they can do jobs in between and accommodate their time, technology has assisted that. Like you mentioned, technology needs to have a purpose, and it doesn't need to be redundant. Yeah.
Thank you. I think that's really great because on my own, actually, I have a program where I teach financial literacy to kids between 13 to 17. I tried to teach this to children from public school, but this was like 4 years ago.
Mhm.
But Ministry of Education doesn't allow me to come into school because I'm not a teacher. I'm not a qualified teacher.
I
So
see.
what I did was I went to private school instead, and I got blessing from the private school to organize this. And this is where I think I would love to revive that program because I do have some successful young entrepreneurs that I've nurtured in the program that I did. But now I think he is going abroad to study, and I'm not sure whether he continues the businesses that he started earlier. But I do love to have this enhanced further through your program so that we can really nurture young either employees or young different version and breed of entrepreneurs going forward so that they would not be just like me or just like anybody else and have a broader vision and capabilities going forward. Yeah.
That sounds interesting, Ridzuan. We
Yeah.
are actually, like we mentioned, we're creating something for the career counselors. So if we can somehow merge what you want to do with fintech and also entrepreneurism and financial literacy, I think it's something that we can look at. Maybe we can take this offline later or something.
Sure, sure.
Sounds
Thank
interesting.
you. Yeah.
Because we hope to, with the video that we're creating, we hope to reach around 20,000 students all over the country.
Hmm.
So it's going to be not just fintech. It's going to be there's cloud computing, animation and gaming. So there's a whole bundle of package of videos that we tend to share,
Mm.
including modules as well. So
Fantastic.
maybe we can venture that. We'll take that offline with you, maybe after Raya, maybe inshallah.
Sure. Okay.
I do like the fact that when Chirizan, you mentioned earlier about the team dynamic, it has the five different types of functions and all that, and it kind of resonates well when you look at the ecosystem or the industry in general. You have the funders of this particular industry, you have the talents of the industry, there's technical specialists, you also have those people who are better in marketing, things like that. These are all represented in the way that the industry in itself is interacting with the world.
Yep.
The nature of it is to me is kind of is interesting that you see that it doesn't mean that you have to be an accountant or it doesn't mean that you have to be you could be somebody from HR and be a contributing member of this industry.
Precisely.
So I do hope that the kids out there that when they're looking at you might not know this, but you might end up being in the fintech industry without actually wanting to be in the fintech industry.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I think the other one that I want to add is among the children that you may be talking to, or definitely you're going to be talking to them, one role that rarely appear is those who wants to invest. Okay, because a lot of the kids will be looking at, okay, either I want to be an employee or I want to be an entrepreneur. But there will be some of them who are the observer from outside who think that I don't want to get my hands dirty, but I want to be part of this. And I know that I can convince my father or mother to give me certain amount of money for me to participate in this. So these are the potential VCs mindset that you can actually nurture as well from a very young age. So this is where I think you could set up a program where let's save some money where you think that you don't need this money in the near future and start looking at how you want to evaluate what do you think as a very interesting and viable businesses that you can invest in. So it's like a test or a program or a competition where if you invest in this, would that company turn out to be profitable? And what are the lessons learned, whether it is profitable or whether it is not profitable? So then from there, you can loop it back into the rest who is doing the business and give comment about how a potential funder would look at what they do and whether it is attractive enough or not. Because the thing about, say, for example, telling stories, it might be interesting to tell stories at the onset when you start the business. But later, when you want to tell a story about seeking funding, maybe at stage pre-seed or Series A or anything, how do you tell the different stories and how do you appear appealing to those kind of investors? So this technique and these capabilities also need to be taught very early so that they have a vision in terms of how I can actually enhance this business rather than in 5 years. It could probably be done in 2 years, faster than what we think. So these are something that I'm really interested to see because not every kids would want to actively get involved. Some are very reserved, but they have other ideas that may not be entertained at that point of time. So just putting it out there for you to think about it. Yeah.
That sounds quite interesting. The VC side. Because that's actually what I like to do with all these
Exactly. I mean, you would like to do it at this stage because you've seen it before. But some are natural VC because they can see it from very early. But the only thing lacking is they don't have the money. But the way they look at business, the intuition that they have is actually born with them. So this is something very interesting to nurture.
That sounds very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, if I may ask, Encik Ridzuan, you mentioned that you have program for financial literacy that you've did in private school. What advice or what activities could you suggest to career counsellors that they can do in their schools to maybe like start the ball rolling or start students talking about fintech? What can you suggest they do?
I think what can I share in terms of what I did before was I don't really do a lot of talking, but I do a lot of activities. One of the activities that we do is I have actually a specific cash flow program where it has various end objective of whether you want to go for a luxury holiday or whether you want to save certain amount of money or whether you want to buy certain properties and get the children to participate in that cash flow program because that will tell and teach them in terms of when you run a business, it's not just profit that you're looking for, but managing cash flow is one of the most important things that you need to understand. But to tell them technically what cash flow is, it's pretty boring. Yeah. So what I did was I created that game and that cash flow, something like a monopoly game, but it is focused on cash flow so that they would understand given certain time, given certain hurdles, given certain element like taxation, can you maintain the cash flow that you wanted to achieve the objective that you want at the end? So that's one of the things that not only the children need to know, but the career counselor also need to understand, because children has a very short span of attention. Talking to them for a long time will not actually serve its purpose. You need to get them into an activities, and that's what I did with the children in school.
Yeah, 10 minutes max, I think. Yeah. 10 minutes after that, they start.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, exactly.
And very, very, very fast habis. So funny you should say about financial literacy because we have this boy, Akmal Kayum. He is, we call him a tech whiz juga lah because at an early age, from 2, he already has over 500-600 clients that he's servicing. And he went out of boarding school in order to service them, and also he's just waiting for SPM to finish and he can go full-fledged business. So we went to a press conference one time, and I was asking him about our program, and Kayum and his team was the one that did the financial literacy part and also entrepreneurship. And he said, Miss, we don't need to concentrate on financial sangat, or we have systems and we have softwares for that we can do. And I said, okay, tak apa. And okay, fast forward a couple of days later, dia keluar headliner, 14-year-old boy earning 40,000 in the first quarter, and they call I, Miss, income tax is going to chase me. And tell me, oh, it's okay. Do you know how much tax you need to pay? And oh, you have software for I forget what you have software for that. So I'm sure you'll be fine. No, I'm not. There's none yet. I'm not created yet. Oh well, that's why you need to learn financial literacy. A, nobody can con you. B, you know how much you need to pay. So you don't need to be an auditor to do that, but you need to know as a business owner what goes in, what goes out, what tax that you must pay. You cannot evade tax, but you can reduce your tax. And I just told him, if you're not earning 40,000, your 40,000, because he was earning 40,000, maybe more or less in a quarter, and so I said, you're gonna factor in your capital expenditure, your overhead, your everything. By the end of the day, is not a, they don't count on that
Yeah,
amount of tax. So
exactly.
yeah, and then you're a startup anyway, so you're not gonna be
Yeah.
taxed anyway. So
The,
oh
the,
okay,
the other thing that we
tax.
also need to the other thing that we also need to enlarge their perspective is
Yeah.
what are the social impact that they would bring
True.
by having a business. It's not just about the dollar and cents that they make,
Yeah.
but whether it is also beneficial to the people around them, their neighbors, their parents, their friends, even their atuk and nenek, for them to understand that when you do a business, you must also understand that there are environment out there that you need to take care of. So this will create a different breed of entrepreneurs that are better in terms of looking at social impact, because social impact is really something that is considered as an afterthought. A lot of companies are creating CSR, but the only CSR that they do is just planting trees and shoving rubbish here and there. But that's really a drama. Okay, that's not something that I'm passionate about. What I was suggesting to the government earlier was some of the CSR program could be channel or rechannel as maybe a startup funding for a new company rather than planting trees. Not that planting trees is not good, but if the CSR can be the CSR fund can be used to actually use as a capital for new startup, I think that would be far more beneficial compared to the nature of CSR currently. So this is something that I think as part of the program we can also invite larger corporation to understand and see that these kids are building up companies, and perhaps they also want to channel their CSR fund to invest into these kids startup, so that it becomes a real businesses rather than just an activity on the side. So that's probably one of the things that we can do to make it impactful from a social perspective.
I was also one because I think we talked about this as well, right, Q? We wanted the kids, the ninjas, maybe in the future of all the programs that we do, for them to have a sense of community. They need to technically hang out with the community, and for them to feel the hardship of the community, they need to feel that hardship. Instead of watching it, to some extent, it does, evoke some emotions, but to live the reality of other people would be the best, fast learning track for them to like have an epiphany or catalyze a spark, a feeling of wanting to be responsible. So I think in the past also, me and Azura, the program Digital Ninja program manager, we wanted to have an organization is a long-term thing, right? To be with the community, and for you to spend 3 days and 2 nights does not do justice to what we need to, the solutions we need to come up with for us to do fact finding, to learn and to absorb. So we have that in the actually pipeline, but of course due to the COVID, we wanted to do a community program where we focus on the community that is nearby to wherever we were staying, and to go frequently to find out what the daily life of that community, and also what can we do. It can be as simple as solar power. If it's rumah kampung, rumah orang asli yang just pakai gas, pelita gas saja. But yeah, I think with the restriction of COVID, maybe we hope next year that we can do. But I think you're on point that the kids need to have a sense of community, in the sense that any solution they create, it has to go back to a purpose where who does it serve, and they need to be able to find solutions not just for money, but it has to be solely for the integrity of creating a solution to a problem that is ongoing, that is happening, and it's that's affected by a lot of people. Yeah, I think we're nearing 11:30 already.
Yeah.
Do we have another question? Do you have a question? Any more questions you want to ask?
I think maybe just to because I worry that maybe the content of it might be a little bit too heavy. Maybe lighten a little bit to maybe have some interesting anecdotes so we can end it in a positive note. What would be your, let's say, advice for our ninjas who might be interested in joining or becoming a fintech, either employee or employer? Is there any what we call a pearl of wisdom or mutiara kata that you can share as an association?
Very simple. I just tell them you must love what you do, and you're and passionate about it. And by way of saying passionate is you must be willing to do something that nobody's going to pay you money for. That's what passion is. Yeah, so if you're really passionate to that definition, I think whatever that you do is going to be something that you love, and doing something that you love is not going to be it's not going to be seen as a work or a burden. It's going to be something that you would just wake up and do it on a daily basis. So that is something that you need to find, not force yourself to do. So if you find that, I think that would be fantastic, and that's probably what you are set to do, inshallah, for the entire life. Yeah.
So we get a lot of that, ya Q. Follow your passion. So kita dulu mak I, bapa I nak I jadi ni,
Doctor, lawyer, or engineer. Or jangan balik rumah.
Yeah, but that's normal for those who are like our parents are always like that. But it has a deeper meaning, so that's why I injected the word passion in there. So because a lot of people want to do business because of the money.
Yeah.
But I just want to remind them that money is not the end product. Money should be the byproduct.
Yes.
The end product should be whether are you able to serve the stakeholders that you are supposed to serve, and are you continuously able to serve to do that. If you are able to do that and it makes money, and that is the best part in doing what you do, because you fulfill their wishes and you get paid for doing so. So that is that, and money will never become an issue because you're not going to be greedy, because money is not the purpose, because you always want to serve the customer that you want to serve. So that's how you want to make sure that you are always ethical and always in the best of your behavior, rather than does it make money or not. And if you start to think about that, then you will compromise a lot of those values, especially on the ethical platform.
Yeah. I have to agree with you on that. I think we have a couple of students in the past. Oh, I want to make money, miss. No, that's wrong. It's wrong. Yeah, because it would mean that at all costs, right?
Yeah.
So if it was to be maybe if they will come from a maybe financially challenged, it would be like, okay, to maybe provide better healthcare for my mom and dad, to provide to get a better house. It could be something like that. To benefit would be the family members. But if your target, your end goal is the money, the bags of money, the bags of gold, then like anything, you will just go. Just like where the ethics and integrity and credibility will be in a way jeopardized in a sense. Yeah. So I think, I think with that, thank you so much, Ridzuan. Thank you for your time. And I think what you mentioned about to see if we can maybe, to reignite back your financial literacy program. Let's take this offline. I think we'll talk to Tang as well. And we'll try and arrange a time where we can talk to you better, maybe inshallah after Raya.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much, guys.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Riza, for your time.
Okay. All right. Assalamualaikum. Bye.
Selamat Hari Raya.
Selamat Hari Raya to you. Yeah. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Okay.
Alright, okay, thanks. Okay, that was okay semua? That was alright, thanks bro. And
Alright, I
then
gotta run to
okay,
another meeting.
okay, go, take care. Alright, catch
Alright.
you.